I want you to picture a specific kind of person for a second. We have all met one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Maybe it's a colleague or a boss, or even just that one friend who always seems to organize the group dinners. And on the surface, they're totally relaxed.
Like nothing bothers them.
Right. They are cracking jokes. They are charming. The vibe is just incredibly easy.
It is the kind of person you immediately want to grab a beer with.
Exactly. But then, you look around the room and you realize something kind of startling. Without anyone explicitly saying so, this person is completely in charge.
Yeah, they run the show.
Like the air in the room shifts when they move. You are laughing at their jokes, sure, but you also realize you are doing exactly what they want you to do. You have been steered.
It is a fascinating dynamic. It is that very specific blend of high charisma and absolute command.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because it is not the drill sergeant screaming orders. It is subtler. It is almost seductive in a way. And that is exactly what we are unpacking today on the deep dive.
Yes, we are.
We are looking at a specific profile called the AAFN, which is also known as the dominant controller.
And just to give this the proper context right up front, we are analyzing this profile based on the Max Energy ME80 personality system.
Which is an absolute beast of a system. But before we get into the actual person, let's establish the baseline here. For the listener who is new to this, what exactly is the ME80? Because it sounds a bit like an engine part.
It does sound like one, doesn't it? And that is actually a really decent analogy, because most personality tests you might take online, they look at behavior, like what you do.
Right, like are you introverted, are you organized, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But the Max Energy ME80 is designed to decode human behavior through the lens of energy flow. It is not about the paint job on the car, it is about the mechanics under the hood.
So the internal wiring.
Right. It looks at how your internal energy processes information, how it filters emotion, and how it eventually manifests out there in the real world.
Under the hood is the key phrase there, because our mission today is to dissect the AAFN. We want to understand not just that boss mode energy they project, but the actual internal mechanisms.
The IP, IQ, and EQ that drive them.
Yeah. We want to know their secret superpowers in business, and honestly, we need to talk about the shadows they cast when that energy gets a little too intense.
And with AAFN, those shadows can be quite long. I mean, it is a profile completely defined by paradoxes.
Well, let's jump right into that identity then. In the source material, there is this concept called the hero section, which defines their core vibe.
Yes, the core declaration.
For the dominant controller, it describes them as someone who plays the crowd with charm while keeping a tight grip on the situation, which feels like a total contradiction to me.
Oh, yeah.
Usually, if you are gripping something tightly, you are not charming. You are intense. You are sweating.
But that contradiction is the exact key to unlocking them. The AAFN operates with what we call an exterior shell of a relaxed atmosphere. They want things to feel light, fun, easy.
But inside?
Inside, the core is absolute inner dominance.
So wait, is the chill vibe a lie?
Yeah.
Like, is it just a manipulative strategy?
Strategy might imply it is malicious, which it isn't always. Think of it as a control philosophy. For the dominant controller, controlling the room does not mean shouting. That is just inefficient to them.
So what is real control then?
Real control is about interaction. It is about humor. They use that easygoing tone to unknowingly guide people along a predetermined path. You think you are just casually chatting, but suddenly you have agreed to their entire plan.
That is wildly effective. But I have to push back on this a bit. Why do they do it? What is the psychological driver here? Is it just huge ego? Do they just love hearing your own voice?
It is rarely just ego, actually. It really comes down to their perception of order. For an AAFN, if a situation is not firmly in their hand, they feel a genuine anxiety that order could collapse at any second.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have a highly tuned sensitivity to chaos.
So they see entropy and disaster where the rest of us just see a casual Friday hangout.
Precisely. So they naturally position themselves at the center. They assume responsibility for the pace and the direction of everything around them. They are not just grabbing power for fun, they are holding the roof up because they are terrified it might fall on everyone's head.
That reframes it completely. It is not a power trip, it is a safety mechanism.
Exactly. They step in because they fear that if they don't, the whole structure crumbles.
Okay, so that is the behavior we see on the surface. But I want to get technical for a minute since we promised to look under the hood. You mentioned the energy flow earlier. What is the engine driving this dominant controller?
This is where the ME80 system gets really interesting. The energy matrix structural logic for the AAFN operates on two parallel tracks simultaneously.
Okay.
Atmosphere management and power control.
So they are DJing the vibe and managing the corporate hierarchy at the exact same time. That sounds exhausting.
It takes a massive amount of energy. And to understand how they sustain it, we have to break down the layers, the IP, IQ, EQ, and the manifestation layer.
Let's take those one by one because those acronyms are specific to this system. Let's start at the deepest level, the IP, or inner value layer. What is happening in the basement of their brain?
The IP layer for the AAFN is defined as direction sense activated.
Direction sense.
Right. Think of this as their internal compass, or GPS. Before they even open their mouth, before they process a single emotion or read the room, their internal value system has already set a destination. They know where they want to go. It is fixed.
So the destination is set before the car even starts moving.
Yeah.
They are not figuring it out as they go.
Yeah.
They're not wondering, hey, where should we have lunch? They already know.
No, never. The goal is preloaded. Their default state is, I have a direction, and from there, we move up to the IQ layer.
The emotional activation layer.
Exactly. This is the processor. Here, the setting is structure and principle judgment.
Structure and principle judgment. That sounds very rigid compared to the vibe they project. What does that actually look like in real time?
It means their intellect acts as a ruthless filter. While they might be smiling and joking with you, their brain is constantly assessing the logic, the rules, and the hierarchy of the situation.
Like, does this make sense?
Does this make sense? Is this efficient? Does this follow the principles of success?
So while I'm telling them a funny story by the coffee machine, they are analyzing whether my story is structurally efficient.
In a way, yeah. They are judging the structural integrity of the interaction itself. They are asking, is this conversation serving the direction I set down in my IP layer?
Tough crowd. Okay, so they have a set direction, that's IP, and they have a structural filter, which is IQ. Now we get to the EQ, the decision calculation layer. And the notes here say this is emotional expression and release.
Yes.
Which actually surprises me, because I usually think of controllers or boss types as being cold, stoic, poker face kind of people.
And that is the absolute biggest misconception about the AAFN. The dominant controller is actually very expressive. Their decision-making involves letting that energy out. Yes. They use emotion, passion, humor, intensity as a tool to execute their decisions. They do not hold it in. They project it to shape the environment.
So the emotion is the fuel.
The emotion is the lever. If they need to get you moving, they might use intense excitement. If they need you to stop right now, they might use a sudden flash of anger or a really sharp joke. They are not robots. They are emotional conductors.
Oh, I see.
They calculate that releasing a specific emotion right now will get the exact result they want.
That explains the charisma completely. That explains why people are drawn to them. They feel so alive to be around.
Exactly. And that naturally leads us to the final layer, the manifestation layer.
The output.
Right. The output is energy released outward. The result is impact, action, and tangible changes in the real world. They are not dreamers who sit around and ponder all day. They are doers. When an AAFN is in the room, things happen.
So putting that all together, internal direction, structural logic, expressive emotion, all resulting in outward impact, that is a potent combination.
It is what the ME80 system calls fire-type energy.
Let's dig into that fire-type energy a bit more. We are in the deep analysis section of the report now. It mentions that this fire energy gives them dignity and presence.
Yes, they have a natural gravity to them, but fire burns, right? Because of that intense fire energy, they are highly sensitive to being challenged. Their dignity is incredibly important to them. They absolutely cannot stand losing face.
And yet, they don't usually defend their dignity by screaming and throwing a tantrum. They use what the report calls the soft hand.
Right. This goes back to that paradox we started with. They establish their dominance through relaxed interaction. Their speech can often feel very ambiguous. It is both caring and directive at the exact same time.
Oh, I've definitely experienced this. It's when someone says something like, you're going to handle that report, right? You're the best at it. Nobody else could do it like you. And you were standing there thinking, wait, did I just get a compliment? Or was I just ordered to do a weekend's worth of work?
That is the classic AAFN move. It is so hard for you to discern whether you are being supported or pressured. And that ambiguity is a deliberate control tactic. It makes it very, very difficult for you to push back.
Right, because if I say I can't do that, I am rejecting the compliment, not just the work. I look like the jerk who can't take praise.
Exactly. If you push back, they can just throw their hands up and say, hey, I was just saying you're good at it. Relax. It puts you in an impossible bind.
It is genius, really. A little manipulative, but genius. And the source mentions they also habitually redefine standards.
That is the structure part of their IQ kicking in again. If the current rules of the game are not working for them, or they aren't giving them enough control, they will simply rewrite the rules. They set the standard for what is acceptable in the room.
They don't just play the game, they design the board.
Precisely.
Okay, but this brings us to the darker side of the moon here. Every superpower has a shadow. What happens when this dominant controller energy goes wrong? The report identifies a specific shadow blind spot, which is control and rationalization.
Rationalization is the really tricky one here. The AAFN often convinces themselves that their intense need for control is simply responsibility.
Like, I'm just doing what needs to be done.
Exactly. They tell themselves, I have to do this, or the whole project will fail. They do not see themselves as controlling. They see themselves as the only responsible adult in the room.
Wow.
Which makes it very hard for them to accept feedback because in their mind, they are the hero saving the day. They are not micromanaging, they are ensuring quality.
And then there is the weaponized humor. This part really stood out to me in the sources. Wrapping sharpness in teasing. We touched on this, but let's go a little deeper.
This is a very common blind spot for this personality type. When they are dissatisfied with you, they might not address it directly with a mature, serious conversation. Instead, they make a joke about it in front of the whole team. But the joke has a real sting to it.
Right. It is that sarcastic comment in a meeting where everyone laughs, but the person it was aimed at feels about 2 inches tall.
Exactly. And because it was, quote-unquote, just a joke, the recipient can't defend themselves without looking like they have no sense of humor. Can't you take a joke? That is the ultimate shield for the AAFN.
It creates this invisible pressure. It completely shuts down opposition because nobody wants to be the buzzkill.
It silences the room while keeping the room laughing. It is a highly sophisticated weapon.
The report also mentions vulnerability here in the shadow section.
Yeah, they have a very low tolerance for vulnerability, both in themselves and often in others. If their dignity is challenged, or if they feel exposed in any way, they will subtly reclaim conversational authority.
How do they do that?
They might interrupt or just seamlessly change the subject back to something they're an expert in, effectively suppressing the other person emotionally.
It sounds like a defense mechanism just to keep that hero image completely intact.
It absolutely is. They need to be the pillar. Pillars don't crack.
So how does this play out in social relationships? Because the section on social dynamics calls this the center and distance dynamic. That sounds incredibly lonely to me.
It is a double-edged sword. On one hand, the AAFN is the natural focal point of any group. They are the life of the party, the person always ready to speak.
And teams love that, right?
Yeah.
When things are chaotic, you want someone to stand up and say, just follow.
Yes, people rely on them heavily to manage chaos. There is a deep safety in being led by someone who clearly knows where they're going. But, and here is the distance part, people also keep them at arm's length.
Because they are afraid of the sting.
Precisely. People enjoy the safety of the leadership, but they deeply fear becoming the target of that public teasing or that high-pressure expectation. So you might respect the AAFN, you might follow them into battle, but you might not fully open up to them because you are always guarding your own dignity around them.
That is a lonely place to be. Being the leader everyone needs, but no one wants to get too close to.
It can be very isolating, and often the AAFN doesn't even understand why people aren't connecting with them more deeply. They think, I'm fun, I'm leading the team, why is there a wall here? They do not realize their fire is what is keeping people back.
Let's pivot to where this energy is most valuable, which is business. Because despite the shadows, this profile sounds incredibly effective in a professional setting. If I'm running a company, I want an AAFN on my payroll.
Oh, they are massive high-value assets. The report highlights their chaos management capacity. When opinions are clashing, when a project is totally stalled, the AAFN is the one who dares to step forward.
They break the gridlock.
Yes. They use that semi-joking, semi-serious method to just cut right through the tension. If a negotiation is stuck, they can use humor to lower the temperature while simultaneously asserting a totally new direction. They do not let things stagnate.
And I assume they have impossibly high standards.
Zero tolerance for a lack of professionalism.
Yeah.
They will call out issues on the spot. If standards are slipping, the AAFN is the one who stops the assembly line and says, this isn't good enough. They prevent the slide into mediocrity.
The report says they are the key force to restart operations during a crisis. Has a really powerful image.
It is. When the system crashes, everyone else might be freezing up or panicking, but the AAFN kicks into gear. Their direction sense activates, remember, the IQ layer, and they start moving energy outward. They are literally the jumpstart cable for a dead organization.
So if you are an AAFN listening to this, or if you're a manager hiring one, what are the recommended career fields? What are the lanes where they can drive fast without crashing the car?
You want them where the pressure is high and the environment is constantly shifting. High pressure management or on-site command. They need to coordinate the whole picture.
It also lists team leadership and training.
Yes, because they are great at driving teams towards specific targets. They set the pace. They are excellent at rallying the troops.
A negotiation.
Absolutely, because negotiation is ultimately a game of conversational initiative. And as we have discussed, the AAFN is a master of controlling the flow of conversation. They maintain the initiative in competitive games perfectly.
Finally, crisis dispatch. Making decisive calls to just stop the bleeding.
That is the ultimate role for them. Rapid decision-making in pure chaos. They do not get paralyzed by the noise.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. If I put an AAFN in a role that requires, say, deep empathy or patient listening or maybe solo research where they have no one to interact with,
They will likely struggle terribly, or they will try to turn it into a management role somehow. If they cannot control the flow, they get very restless. They need to be in the mix, shaping the outcome. They need a crowd to play.
So we have looked at the engine, the behavior, the shadows, and the career paths. I want to wrap this up with the golden sentence from the conclusion of the report. It summarizes this personality type so beautifully.
Let's hear it.
When rules are challenged and order threatens to collapse, the dominant controller stands on the front line to staunch the system's wound.
Staunch the system's wound. That is so vivid. It frames their control not as tyranny, but as triage. They are stopping the bleeding.
But there's a nuance there, isn't there? A caveat for them to reach their actual full potential. Because stanching a wound is great in an emergency, but you can't keep a tourniquet on forever.
That is the critical insight. The report adds a final thought that I think is the single most important takeaway for any AAFN listening. Their true power is only unlocked when they leave breathing room.
Breathing room.
Yes. If they can let their power support rather than continuously oppress, if they can control the situation without crushing the people in it, that is when they become a long-term stabilizing force.
So it is about checking that fire energy.
It is about moderation. It is about being the pillar that holds the roof up, not the ceiling that presses down on everyone's heads. If they can learn to trust the structure without constantly micromanaging it, they go from being a boss to being a true leader.
That is a fantastic distinction. Support, don't oppress, leave some air in the room for everyone else.
Exactly. That is the evolution of the dominant controller.
Well, this has been a genuinely fascinating look into the mind of the AAFM. If you have been listening and realizing, wait, that is me, or perhaps, oh no, that is definitely my boss, we hope this gave you a new perspective on what is happening under the surface. It is not just control for control's sake.
It is always about understanding the why behind the behavior. Once you know they are really just trying to manage chaos, it is so much easier to work with them or to work on yourself.
Absolutely. Now, as we mentioned at the top, this deep dive is based on the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It is a massive system with a lot more to explore than just this one single profile.
We truly only scratched the surface today. If you want to dive deeper into your own profile or understand the people around you better, you should really check out their work.
You can visit the official website at www.maxenergylife.com, or if you're on social media, you can search on Facebook for Max Energy or Mid-Energy. There's just a wealth of information out there.
Highly recommended.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Go out there, manage that chaos, but remember, leave a little breathing room. We will see you next time.
Take care, everyone.